Well, here in New York, there's a battle brewing over a controversial federal immigration enforcement program that more than 700 counties and 34 states have already signed up for. It's called Secure Communities, and it would require local police to forward fingerprints of every person they arrest to the Department of Homeland Security. If agents with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, or ICE, find that someone is undocumented or a non-citizen with a criminal record, they can pursue deportation. The Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, or ICE, wants this program to be used in every jail across the country by 2013. Earlier this year, New York Governor David Paterson approved a Secure Communities agreement, but his decision has come under heavy criticism here in New York City, home to more than 3 million immigrants. On Wednesday, City Council members introduced a resolution calling on the governor to immediately rescind the Secure Communities agreement. This is New York City Council member Idanis Rodriguez.
The Secure Community executive order that was signed by Governor Paterson on May 10th is something that he should think again. He should revise it. And as a governor that has an important record fighting for affordable housing, fighting for the gays and lesbian rights, fighting on the Rockefeller law, we believe that leaving a legacy of his fight to defend immigrant rights is so important, especially to New York City.
New York City is home to hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants who could be affected by the program. Well, at the city's main jail in Rikers Island, federal officials have long had access to lists of foreign-born inmates and detain and deport some 3,200 people a year. But according to a new study of deportations from Rikers Island, for immigrant prisoners held on drug charges, suspects charged with lower-level crimes were selected for deportation more often than those charged with serious felonies. In other words, while the Department of Homeland Security claims to be targeting dangerous criminals for deportation, the study found no correlation between the level of offense committed and being targeted for deportation. For more, we're joined from Boston by the author of the report, Aarti Shahani. She's a researcher with the group Justice Strategies. She's a student at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Aarti, welcome to Democracy Now! Lay out what you found. You just testified before the New York City Council.
I did. Good morning. Well, basically what happened was that New York City Corrections gave Justice Strategies a database of every discharge of prisoners from 2008. We looked at the database, looked specifically at the population of people whose top charge was drug-related, because that's what the report ultimately that we're going to issue is about. But we issued preliminary findings in time for the City Council testimony, and what we basically found is that while Homeland Security claims that they are in the business of public safety, they're trying to partner with jails, with correctional facilities to identify and deport high-risk alien offenders. This is their language. In fact, what they're doing is just tagging people who happen to show up. What we found in our own study was that of the population of people that are tagged for deportation in New York City jails and Rikers Island, there is not a correlation between the level of your charge and whether you're going to get a detainer or not. And in fact, we found that over a quarter of the people that are being tagged for deportation by Homeland Security agents have A misdemeanors or lower level offenses than that. These findings came at a very interesting moment. We asked repeatedly Homeland Security to look at our preliminary findings and talk with us about it, explain why is it that you're talking about targeting people based on risk, but really you're just tagging people who show up. There's a perfect correlation or mirroring between who's in the jail and who gets targeted for deportation. It's practically one-to-one. We wanted to talk with them about that. For several months, I tried to pursue those interviews, didn't get a response back at all. I'm sad to say that the New York Times had the same experience. They tried last week, for a couple of weeks, to get Homeland Security to also comment on my findings, to talk about why is it that this public safety program doesn't seem to have a clear public safety strategy. And again, they promised an interview with the Times, didn't give one. At City Council last week, we were sitting there in the hearing. Speaker Quinn, the other members of the council, kept on asking questions about what's happening at Rikers Island. And it's funny because, you know, these studies that we do from the private side can only elucidate as much as we're told from the public side, and really Homeland Security needed to be there to ask questions. Surprisingly and embarrassingly, New York City itself, the Department of Corrections, wasn't exactly sure what's been going on in its own jails as well, how Homeland Security, which it's invited in, which it subsidizes the presence in New York City, the Department of Corrections itself wasn't sure exactly what was going on its own turf.
Well, Archie, I recall about a year ago doing a column in the New York Daily News about a young Mexican immigrant who was in the country, undocumented, coming home on a Friday night from work, and he was mugged and attacked by 3 youths. He ends up fighting back and slashing one of his attackers. He ends up getting jailed on the crime, and as soon as he gets into Rikers, he's put on a deportation hold. So a victim of a crime ends up not only being jailed for self-defense, but then also being marked for deportation. Did your report find examples of these kinds of injustices occurring in Rikers?
Right. Well, what we actually did was more of a quantitative analysis and then interviewing people about the process itself. But I remember that article, Juan, and one thing that really it raises is that a jail by definition is a population of people that are pre-trial, that are innocent until proven guilty, or people whose conviction is deemed low enough that their sentence is going to be less than 1 year. So the question of why is Homeland Security trying to have a presence in every single jail in the country is a relevant public policy question. Undoubtedly, at a crime scene, it's hard to tell who victim and perpetrator might be at any given moment, and people get taken in. And then the other thing is, it's not humanly possible, or it's not actually economically or politically possible to deport every deportable person in this country. So this is supposed to be a feel-good program, right? And just to be clear, what's happening right now in New York City is not secure communities. In fact, it's even more developed than secure communities would be in other parts of the country. It's been a long-standing partnership between New York City and the federal immigration authorities, where the immigration authorities basically come in and have access to every allegedly, supposedly immigrant prisoner there, even when that prisoner is pre-trial, even if that prisoner has a low-level charge. The other thing that we found in the study was that people were being tagged. Over half of the people that are tagged for deportation get identified in less than 24 hours. Now, that speed, the brevity of just issuing these deportation warrants, or rather not requests, they're not warrants, the brevity of it indicates that there's not much by way of investigation going on. So, again, this is a question for Homeland Security that, I hope they watch the show and they're predisposed to answer it at some point. But the question is, what exactly is Homeland Security doing to decide who it does and doesn't want to deport? Is it simply a matter of filling up their numbers? Is there actually a strategy there? Because it doesn't look like there is one. Now, on the New York City side, something very interesting that we found is that New York has been extremely generous to the feds, so much so that we're concerned that there is a basic violation or overseeing of basic prisoner rights and monetary concerns for taxpayers. What I mean by that is when Homeland Security identifies somebody for deportation, they issue something called a detainer. A detainer is not a warrant. It's a request. It's never issued or approved by a judge. It's simply issued by the administrative agency, the deportation agency. Now, they issue this detainer request, and New York City responds by effectively holding the person on whom the request has been placed for the duration of the case. So let me give you an example. I get arrested on a violation. A violation is even smaller than a misdemeanor. I'm at Rikers Island. On average, for a violation, I would spend no more than on average, I would spend 2 days in Rikers Island. My case would be processed. I'd get a slap on the wrist, and I'd leave. Now, if a judge deems that I'm eligible for bail on my violation, but Homeland Security has requested that I get put in deportation after my proceedings, New York City is going to keep me in jail the entire duration of my case, which is on average a little less than a month long. So these additional days where I'm being denied bail on my pre-trial case is driving up the costs for New York City. And we found that when you control for race and when you control for offense level, on average, people are spending 73 additional days in jail. That's the associated on average increase in jail time with the detainer issuance. And that additional 73 days on average is a cost being absorbed by New York City. And New York City didn't have a clue about it. And that's what's extraordinary about this, is that for what seems like 20 years now. New York can't even identify when exactly their partnership started with the feds. But New York City has given the feds free property, rent-free. Who wouldn't love rent-free property in New York? But they've given rent-free property in New York City to the feds on Rikers Island to go ahead and tag people without any public safety strategy.
Let me ask you about something else.
And
no, I wanted to ask you about something else. The governor's agreement earlier this year to basically, in essence, expand this program to now anyone who gets fingerprinted or arrested by police. The governor never made an announcement of this. It was discovered, as I understand, through a Freedom of Information request. While he did announce earlier this year that he was going to be open to large numbers of pardons for legal residents who may have been convicted of crimes years back and who were facing possible deportation. The impact of this governor's decision to join this Secure Communities program?
It's a great question, and I don't think that the governor's office themselves know what the impact is of this decision. The Secure Communities program, it's building a car and driving it at the same time, right? And in fact, the New York Times and several other outlets around the country did a couple of articles a week and a half ago documenting the fact that Secure Communities, it's not clear whether it's a voluntary program that localities can choose to sign up with, or is it a mandatory program where the feds are saying to locals, you are going to do this. Early on, since 2008, up until about a month ago, Homeland Security maintained, listen, obviously there are federalism concerns. We, the feds, can't tell you the locals what to do. This is a purely voluntary program. But now that they're seeing localities actually choose to opt out, for example, in Virginia, in Santa Clara, and Washington, D.C., they're seeing localities choose to opt out. It seems like the Homeland Security officials, whether you're talking about Napolitano or Morton or the head of Secure Communities, David Venturella, they seem to be disputing with each other and getting caught publicly disagreeing with each other, contradicting each other about whether this is a voluntary or mandatory program. So what does this mean for New York State, for New York City? I'd be surprised if the governor's office knew, because it doesn't even seem like the feds know.
We're talking to Aarti Shahani of Justice Strategy. She's speaking to us from Boston, Juan.
Well, we're joined